My father didn't shout when he tried to erase me. He just leaned back in the chair at my dining table, looked me in the eye and said, "It's your duty to pay for her wedding." My mother folded her napkin like this was etiquette, not execution. And Brianna, my little sister, kept that soft, satisfied smile. The same one she's worn her entire life whenever someone else is about to lose so she can win. I didn't cry. I didn't plead. I stood up, pushed my chair in, and said the calmest sentence I've ever spoken in my life. "You have 24 hours to leave my house." And that was the moment everything shifted. My name is Elena, and for most of my life, I honestly believed keeping the peace was the same thing as keeping a family. I was the kid who learned early how to stay quiet, how to solve things myself, how to never be a problem. While other kids were begging their parents for rides to school dances, I was stocking shelves at a corner store so I could pay for my first community college class. My parents, Martin and Lila, loved telling people they'd raised an independent daughter. What they never mentioned was that independence wasn't a trait they nurtured. It was a survival skill I had to grow. And then there was Brianna. Brianna floated through childhood like the world owed her soft landings. Bigger bedroom, nicer clothes, louder praise, gentler consequences. When she messed up, it was, "She's sensitive." When I hesitated, it was, "Elena, don't be difficult." 3 years ago, when Martin lost his accounting job, they showed up at my doorstep with 2 suitcases and a tone that felt less like a request and more like a decision. They said it would be, just for a little while. "Until we get back on our feet," my mother promised, hugging me like I was rescuing them from a hurricane. "Family sticks together," my father added, already scanning the house like he was estimating square footage he'd just purchased. "Your place is so much nicer than the pictures," Brianna said, walking in like she owned the light. Temporary turned into settled in, so fast my own home stopped feeling like mine. The night they arrived, Lila walked straight into my kitchen and started rearranging drawers. She didn't ask. She didn't look up. "You'll thank me, dear." "Efficiency matters," she said, as she shoved my spatulas into a different cabinet. "Martin took over my home office within an hour. I just need somewhere to focus while I job hunt," he told me. I never saw him send a single resume. Brianna, who was only staying for a few days, wandered into my master bedroom, spun slowly in a circle, and said, "This feels more like my vibe." By the end of the week, she was sleeping in my bed like she was auditioning for a lifestyle vlog, and I was in the old guest room on a narrow mattress I'd originally bought for visiting friends. Bills doubled, then tripled. Someone kept setting the thermostat to a comfortable 72 like I was running a resort instead of a mortgage. My car was borrowed without permission. Groceries vanished the moment I put them away. And whenever I gently tried to talk about shared expenses, Lila would pat my hand and say, "Oh sweetheart. Family takes care of family." Funny how family always meant me taking care of them. Even outside the house, the story was twisted. One afternoon my neighbor, Mrs. Carter, pulled me aside with this sad, sympathetic look. "Your parents told me it's been so hard on you financially," she whispered. "Bless you for helping them." Hard on me, while I was the one paying for everything. The truth was right there, but I kept telling myself to endure it. That's what good daughters do, right? They stretch. They bend. They make room. It wasn't until 6 months ago, sitting in a small office with warm lamps and a tissue box I refused to touch, that someone finally named it. "Elena, my therapist, Dr. Layton, said gently, this isn't you being loving. This is financial abuse and emotional manipulation." I didn't confront anyone that day. I wasn't ready. But I walked out of that office with new eyes. I started noticing everything. The entitlement in Brianna's voice when she called my bedroom her space. The way Martin referred to my house as our place to his friends. The way Lila acted like my bank account came with her name stamped on it. The shift didn't arrive all at once. It came in tiny fractures, hairline cracks in the version of family I'd been trained to protect. Once I started seeing them, I couldn't unsee them. And I knew, sooner or later, something was going to break for real. The first real crack was made of numbers. One Saturday morning, I sat alone at the dining table, the same table I used to eat cold takeout on after late nights at the firm, and finally opened the stack of bills I'd been avoiding. Electric, water, groceries, gas, household supplies. Every line item had nearly doubled since the day my family moved in. I added everything twice. Then a third time. The math didn't care about my guilt. It was simple. I was financially supporting 3 adults who were living like they had a full-time sponsor. Me. While I was highlighting totals, Brianna wandered through the room barefoot, glued to her phone. She didn't ask what I was doing. She didn't glance at the bills. She just opened my fridge, grabbed the last bottle of sparkling water I'd been saving for myself, twisted the cap and said, "We're low on groceries again. Can you do a store run today?" No offer to come. No offer to pay. No awareness that she hadn't bought groceries in 3 years. Another crack. Then came her fiancé, Liam. He showed up one afternoon holding a box of pastries, shifting them from one hand to the other like a peace offering. "Hey, Elena, do you have a minute?" he asked. We stepped onto the porch. He cleared his throat, eyes flicking toward the driveway where Brianna was posing with my car like it was part of her engagement photos. "She's really excited about the wedding," he said. "Your parents mentioned you might help with some of the expenses." My stomach dropped. "Why would they say that?" I asked. He hesitated. "I think they just assumed, since you're stable. Not successful. Not hardworking. Just stable. The word people use when they think you can absorb endless responsibility and never break." I felt something inside me tilt. "I haven't agreed to anything," I said. He raised his hands quickly. "I get it. I'm sorry. I should have asked you first." He meant it. He looked genuinely uncomfortable, like he'd just stepped in the middle of a conversation he didn't understand. But the damage was already done. My family had been planning how to spend my money without even including me in the discussion. Then there was the car incident. Brianna took my car for the day without asking. Again. When she rolled back into the driveway, the passenger seat was smeared with foundation and bronzer, fast food wrappers covered the floor, and the gas light was blinking. "Bri, can you give me a heads up next time?" I asked, keeping my tone as gentle as I could. I needed the car today. She stared at me like I'd just told a joke that didn't land. "Relax, Elena. You barely go anywhere. And it's not like you can't afford gas. Not like I can't afford it." That one stung. Not because of the gas, but because of how easy it was for her to spend what she didn't earn. But the worst moments weren't the big ones. It was the daily erosion. Lila moved my clothes to another closet because she needed more hanging space. Martin told guests, "Our house gets such great natural light," as if he'd ever signed a mortgage payment. Brianna sprawled across my couch with shoes on the coffee table, scrolling her phone, sighing dramatically whenever I walked in like I was interrupting her relaxation. I was living like a guest in the house I'd worked my whole 20s to buy. Still, I didn't say anything. The fear of being the ungrateful daughter kept my mouth shut. Then one night in therapy, Dr. Layton leaned forward and said the sentence that cracked everything open. "They're not confused, Elena. They're benefiting." That single line rearranged years of memories. They weren't struggling victims of bad luck. They were very comfortable with the system that kept me working, paying, apologizing. I walked out of that session knowing something big was coming. I just didn't know when. Turned out it would arrive on a Sunday. The kind of Sunday that used to mean comfort and family. But in my house, Sunday dinner had become something else entirely. A performance. I cooked like I always did. Roasted chicken. Vegetables. A simple salad. Lila had retired from cooking as soon as she moved in, and Brianna burned pasta once and declared herself too stressed to handle the kitchen. As I plated the food, I felt it. That strange hum. The air was too still. The glances between them too rehearsed. They sat down. Martin at the head of the table like he'd paid for the chair. Lila smoothing her napkin into perfect rectangles. Brianna with that relaxed posture she uses when she expects things to go her way. We ate in silence for the first few minutes. The chicken tasted like dread. Then Martin cleared his throat. One of those heavy, performative clears that said, "Listen to me." He set his fork down carefully. "Elena, we need to talk about the wedding," he said. There it was. I kept my voice level. "What about it?" Lila jumped in, smile stretched too tight. "We've all been thinking about how important this moment is for Brianna," she said. "A wedding is once in a lifetime. It deserves to be done right." Brianna's fork scraped her plate as she cut into her chicken, eyes on me, the same smug little look she wore any time she knew my life was about to get more complicated. Martin leaned forward. "It's your duty to help your sister," he said. That word. Duty. It hit me like someone had just tightened a rope around my neck. "How exactly?" I asked. Lila laughed lightly. "Oh, Elena. You're a lawyer. You have a stable job. Contributing financially is just common sense." "How much?" I asked. It wasn't my father who answered. Brianna did. 28,000, she said casually, like she was ordering dessert. 28,000. My emergency fund. Years of saying no to myself so I could feel safe in the house I was now apparently renting emotionally from my own family. "That's a lot of money," I said. Martin's voice hardened. "Family deserves investment. And if you can't pay, you need to contribute to this family in another way." "What does that mean?" I asked. He didn't blink. "It means if you won't support us, you shouldn't live here," he said. "Disappear from here. Start over somewhere else. From my house. The home I bought. The home they lived in rent-free for 3 years." Brianna didn't flinch. She just smiled a little wider. Something inside me didn't explode. It didn't shatter. It clicked. Like a lock turning. For once, my heartbeat didn't race. It slowed. I set my fork down carefully. My hands were steady. My voice, when it came out, surprised even me. I stood up. They all watched me, waiting for the usual script. The apology. The justification. "I guess I can try." I looked at each of them, one by one. And said, "You have 24 hours to leave my house." The room snapped. Martin jumped to his feet. "You ungrateful," I held up my hand. He stopped. Lila gasped into her napkin like I'd slapped her. Brianna's smile vanished. Her eyes went cold. "You can't be serious," she hissed. "I am," I said. "You have until tomorrow night. After that, I'm changing the locks." No yelling. No crying. No explanation. I just walked out of the room. Out of their script. Out of the version of myself they'd built. Behind me I heard Brianna whisper, "She's lost it," and Martin mutter about respect, and Lila's practiced sobs start up. But for the first time in years, none of that meant anything. The storm had finally broken. And I wasn't the one drowning in it anymore. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was scared of what I'd done. Because for the first time in 3 years, the house felt like it might actually belong to me again. Every creak in the floorboards, every hum from the heater, every shadow on the wall reminded me that this space had a pulse before they moved in. And it was finally starting to sound like mine again. I sat on the living room couch, Brianna always sprawled across, and pulled my knees up under me. No TV blaring. No phone calls on speaker. Just actual quiet. Real quiet. At 2 in the morning, I opened my laptop and started reading. As a criminal defense attorney, property law isn't my lane, but I know enough to know when someone has rights and when they don't. They weren't tenants. There was no lease. They paid no rent. They contributed nothing. I was not evicting them. I was removing long-term guests who had overstepped every boundary and then tried to erase me from my own house. By 3, I'd booked a locksmith for the next evening. By 4, I had a list of everything in the house that belonged to me. Spoiler, it was almost everything. By 6, I was standing at the kitchen window with a mug of coffee, watching the sky go from gray to peach. There were colors in that sunrise I hadn't seen in months. At 7 sharp, I walked down the hall and knocked on my bedroom door. Martin opened it in a robe I bought myself 2 birthdays ago. He looked annoyed. Like I'd woken him up in his own hotel suite. "What now?" he snapped. "I'm reminding you," I said. My voice sounded like it does in court, calm and precise. "You have until tonight to leave." He scoffed. "You're being dramatic, Elena." "No," I said. "I've been patient. You're just experiencing the difference." Behind him, Brianna sat up in my bed, hair messy, eyes furious. "You're really doing this?" she demanded. "Yes," I said. Lila appeared in the hallway, clutching her robe like a bad actress in a soap scene. "Sweetheart, don't do something you'll regret," she whispered. "I regret letting it go this far," I replied. Then I turned and walked away. They spent the morning in a kind of low-level chaos. Cabinets slammed. Drawers opened and closed. Suitcases were dragged out and left half-packed. No one knocked on my door. No one said sorry. Around noon, they changed tactics. They gathered in the living room like a jury. Martin leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Lila perched at the edge, eyes red and puffy. Brianna sat with her arms crossed, a full-body pout. "We think you need to reconsider," Martin said. "No," I replied. Lila tried next. "Where will we go? We have no savings. No plan. This is cruel." "Cruel?" I repeated. "You moved into my home without a conversation. You took my bedroom. My office. My money. For 3 years. I stayed quiet. I set one boundary and suddenly I'm cruel." Brianna stood up, voice shaking with anger. "You're jealous," she spit. "That's what this is. You can't stand that things come easier to me. You don't want me to have a beautiful wedding." I stood too, slowly. "I'm not jealous, Brianna," I said. "I'm exhausted." She actually flinched like no one had ever said that to her before. Martin raised his voice. "Family doesn't throw family out." I looked directly at him. "You gave me a choice at dinner," I said. "Pay, or disappear from my own house. You just didn't expect me to choose myself." That shut him up. By early evening, they were still there. Still talking. Still insisting I wouldn't actually go through with it. So I picked up my phone. Dialed. Put it on speaker. "Emergency services, what's your—" Martin's hand flew up. "Fine," he snapped. "We'll go." I ended the call before giving my name. For the next 2 hours, I watched them pack. Not with anger. Not with joy. With clarity. Lila wrapped dishes she'd bought with my card, muttering about how ungrateful I'd turned out. Martin stomped through the hallway like a king being forced to abdicate. Brianna slammed drawers so hard I thought the wood would crack. The louder they were, the calmer I felt. At 9:23 p.m., they stood by the front door with their luggage. Lila turned to me, eyes shiny and theatrical. "I hope you're happy," she whispered. "I hope I will be," I said honestly. Brianna didn't look at me. Liam's car pulled up at the curb and she stormed out without a word. Martin lingered for 1 second longer, jaw tight, then walked out into the cool night like he was doing me a favor. I closed the door. Locked it. Leant my forehead against the wood and breathed. For the first time in years, the house was mine. The air was mine. The silence was mine. I walked through every room they'd invaded. The bedroom they turned into a suite. The office Martin had claimed. The kitchen Lila had rearranged. There were dents and stains and little signs of the chaos they brought, but underneath all of that, the bones of my life were still there, steady and waiting. Peace didn't arrive like a parade. It arrived like a long exhale I didn't know I'd been holding for 3 years. The first morning alone didn't feel real. I woke up expecting to hear footsteps in the hallway. Brianna yelling into her phone on speaker. Martin coughing. Lila clattering dishes she never washed afterwards. There was nothing. Just the soft hum of the heater and a square of sunlight creeping across the floor of my master bedroom. My master bedroom. I made coffee in a quiet kitchen. Set the mug down on the counter. No one complained about the brand. No one told me I was out of oat milk again. No one left crumbs all over the stove while I was cleaning. Later that week, my friend Nora stopped by. She stepped inside, looked around slowly, and let out a low breath. "I didn't realize how heavy it felt in here until now," she said. "Elena, you look 10 years lighter." I hadn't seen it. But I felt it. Bills went back to normal. My fridge stayed stocked. My car stayed where I parked it. And the quiet felt like medicine. Almost 3 weeks later, my phone rang at 2:08 a.m. I knew who it was before I checked. Brianna. Her voice was shaking. "Elena, I need help," she said. Those words hit me harder than any insult ever had, because they were real. Not smug. Not manipulative. Scared. "What's wrong?" I asked. A shallow breath. "I'm pregnant," she whispered. "I can't afford anything. Not rent. Not appointments. Not food. I don't know what to do. Please. I need you." Every old instinct surged. Fix it. Save her. Blow up your own stability so she doesn't feel discomfort. But Dr. Layton's voice cut through it. If you rescue her from her choices, she'll never learn to stand. My heart hurt. I'm not going to pretend it didn't. I'm sorry you're scared, I said. I really am. But I can't be your only safety net anymore. So you're abandoning me? She snapped. No, I said softly. I'm giving you resources. Not my life. I told her about programs. Assistance options. Maternity support housing. Clinics. Support groups. Places designed for exactly what she was facing. She cried harder. Then the line went quiet. She hung up without saying goodbye. I didn't call back. In the weeks that followed, updates reached me indirectly. My grandmother mentioned that Brianna had moved into a maternity support program. Later, that she'd taken a part-time job at a daycare. That she was exhausted, overwhelmed, but managing. For the first time in her life, she was standing on legs that hurt from the weight. Not on my back. Boundaries don't always feel triumphant. Sometimes they just feel clean. A year has passed since the night I told my family they had 24 hours to leave. My parents now rent a small studio across town. Martin works part-time at a hardware store. Lila does remote data entry. They aren't living the life they imagined. But their bills are theirs. Brianna had her baby. A little boy. I've only seen photos my grandmother passes along quietly, but he looks peaceful, completely unaware of the history that came before him. Brianna still struggles. But she's working. She's learning. And she's doing it without assuming I'll set myself on fire so she can feel warm. As for me, my home is quiet. My savings are intact. My mornings belong to me again. I'm building a life that doesn't require shrinking myself to make room for people who never planned to make room for me. My father thought he could guilt me into funding a wedding. My mother thought tears could keep me in place. My sister thought my life was just a backup battery for hers. They were wrong. If any part of this feels familiar to you, you're not crazy and you're not selfish for wanting out. You're allowed to choose yourself. Tell me where you're listening from, share your story in the comments, and make sure you subscribe for more stories like this. You don't want to miss what comes next.